Welcome back to Crafting Men. I'm your host, Jared Hatch, and today I'll be discussing the value that men get from being masculine. So the first of 3 episodes I'll be doing about the value that first men, then family, and communities get when we embrace our masculinity. I think this is a more healthy and holistic approach instead of the usual reacting to the general man-hating or feminist types that think that masculinity is somehow or another the ill and the cause of all that's wrong in this world. But before we get into it, be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming Crafting Men episodes. First off, I have to say that it's sad to me that masculinity has become a concept of a political hot topic and controversial. It's absurd at best to me. But before I go into the value case here, I want to make sure we're discussing the same concept. I think that oftentimes we struggle defining and understanding the principles that we're discussing. If you take masculinity as an example of this, a lot of people try to define it as the activities or hobbies that people engage in. The problem with this is that you cannot find an activity or a hobby where only men or only women like. Instead, you will find a co-ed interest within it, especially here within the US. That leads us to ask, what is masculinity? Why do we talk about it and why does it matter? The more that I've studied it, I found that it's not an activity and instead it is a driving interest, the reason for the activities. Those with masculine tendencies, generally speaking found within men, are more competitive based. This is different than the effeminate energy that is more collaborative based. Both are important and equal opposites, right? Where we need each of them. It's a yin and a yang concept here. No one person has just masculine or just effeminate energy either, nor should they want it. Again, it's a complementary dependency that we have between the two energies. If you have a scenario where there's nothing but masculine energy, there would be an absence or a lack of collaboration and mentorship because it's about individual contribution to us men. We want to earn our place at the table. We want to know that we've produced value in a unique way that allows us to have purpose. For women, on the other hand, there's a concept of pure collaboration where it's almost against the concept of individual contribution. You can see this come out in public policy as well. If you take, for instance, the state of California here in the United States, people are no longer comfortable holding someone accountable for criminal behavior. As such, you have a rising trend of criminal behavior and a growing trend of frustration amongst people because they're not allowed to hold an individual accountable, and instead the community at large has to pay for the decisions of an individual. So this effeminate energy is well-intentioned but taken too far in a scenario like that. An example of where effeminate energy was helpful, however, is if you look back to the days of Rockefeller, where you had monopolies and horrible work conditions for the average American. There was a concept of equality that needed to come out where we took apart monopolies and allowed competition. That's what's needed for real capitalism, right? You have to have a sense of fair competition. By breaking up those monopolies and then having a concept of a standard work week, we in modern America are benefiting profoundly from this. And that is a result of a collaborative energy that was there that countered the competitive drive of those amazing businessmen that built empires and were essentially running the country. So you can see why this is politicized. Ultimately, masculinity, feminism, and gender has become a political-only topic. It's no longer about the value of life, the purpose of life, or anything like that. It's political machinations. The end state and end goal of true feminists is the abolition of gender, family, and subservience to the government. If you don't believe me, listen to them say it for themselves.
Gender is what I would call the cultural wing of male domination and male-dominated society. We might want to call it patriarchy.
The motion before the House tonight is this House believes that feminism cannot be capitalist.
Feminism strives for the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. Capitalism is predicated on privatization, exploitation, and inequality.
Capitalism and capitalist states rely really heavily on the family as a unit of social discipline, social order, austerity, and a source of huge amounts of unpaid labor. In the history of feminism, abolishing the family was, very well known as a demand.
My wife and I always have a great chuckle over the concept that a homemaker should be paid by the government. If you're going to do that, just as a side little note here, you have to understand that means the government can control what you do in the home. And so that controls the type of home you can buy, the type of food you can buy, the amount of children you can have, the distance between the children, the type of clothing you can wear, the principles that can be taught. All of that will eventually be dictated by the government. So if you really want a homemaker to be paid, then there's strings tied to that from the government. But anyway, we'll put that off to the side. Different topic here. These videos were just trying to illustrate the reality that true feminists are not seeking equality. They're looking to destroy the concept of gender and make sure that we are subservient to government. In other words, it's just a political machine. It is not really about gender or equality or anything of that nature. Maybe there are those that believe that it is, or it started that way, but the true heart of the movement is purely political. It's really laughable that these groups actually think the government can make it better. You know, the top-down solution always works, right? Instead of the concept of a ground swelling or, a grassroots movement that we've all seemed to appreciate either in marketing or in political campaigns to make sure that every individual is tied into it.
I just got this memo. We don't get to swear at each other anymore. It was due to a ground smell.
We as men, it's important for us to take a look at that and put it off to the side and think about why we should be masculine. People can have a million reasons not to do things, but you just need one good reason to do it. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you as a man should be masculine, or if you're not a man, why you should encourage the men in your life to embrace their masculinity. First of all, I submit that it is an embracement of reality. As I talked about in my previous video, you can measure stress with the gap between your fantasy and reality. When you try to disassociate yourself with the reality that you are a man and that you have masculine energy driving you, then you're setting yourself up for a very stressful and very painful failure. By embracing that you are a competitive person, that you want to produce value, that you want to be measured by that, you're going to reduce the concept of stress in your life. It really is just that simple. Despite what all these men-hating banshees have to say about it, these were not political machinations that made this. This was a natural development of men being larger, stronger, and with a higher appetite for risk. We're comfortable with putting ourselves in dangerous situations to protect and provide for those we care about. It's always been that way. It's been that way across all civilizations. It's not something that was invented by some sort of evil, maniacal Western government. It's just not. To think that it is, I'm sorry, you need to see mental health. To illustrate this point, I was having an interesting conversation with a buffoon a couple of weeks ago. He had recently gone to 2 different camps for church youth groups, one for the young men and one for the young women. In the young men camp, I happened to have been along with my son. It was funny because we viewed the same thing very differently as good or bad. Whenever there was downtime, the young men found themselves competing. Some competed with chess, some competed with things like foosball or table tennis. Others were more physical with the types of sports that they played outside. But there was always an element of competition. Yes, it created some arguments and some tension at times, but there was always a desire for the kids to compete. Now, for the camp for the young woman, apparently there was a general sense of collaboration and love that was always being expressed. The young women would always hug each other and encourage each other, and lots of over-the-top positivity. And he was complaining about how the young women were better than the young men because they were so supportive and so collaborative, and he was tired of how competitive the young men were. The sad thing is here, that was not a societal design. That was not a government machination. These are people that came from a variety of different families, different income levels, and different areas across the geographic area. They had different racial backgrounds, different socioeconomic profiles. All of it was entirely different. They had different physical stature. Some were scrawny, some were very fit and strong, some were well overweight. They all wanted to compete. They all wanted to prove that they were good at something in producing. It wasn't that there was some sort of evil machination in play here. That's just their natural tendency. When you start stepping back and looking at how youth and children behave, you can see this very simply how it comes out. And that is why it's very easy to disprove any of these conspiracy theories that somehow or another there's a political machination that designed masculinity to enslave women. The second reason is it helps us understand how we work. It's important to understand how your body functions, your mind included. We as men think differently than women. For instance, we can have a nothing box. It is possible for men to actually sit and think about nothing. Apparently, a woman can't do that. Not being a woman, I can't confirm, but that is something that I've discovered with all my different studies and readings about the difference in how our minds process things. If you know how you work, then you can appreciate and understand how to take care of yourself. Without that understanding, you're guessing, and so you won't be confident. We all need confidence in our lives. And so having a sound, grounded understanding of what drives you, what makes you tick, is going to help you have the confidence because you know how you work. You know how to produce something of value. And that leads us on to the third point, which is you will know how to contribute. It is important to know how you differentiate yourself. If you have a group of people that are all the same, then no one individual is necessarily producing value. They're all of equal worth and equal lack of worth. If you put a group of people in a room together and they all have a different skill set, however, then now you have a concept of value because you have a concept of individual specialization. This is true for businesses, for special forces units, for every partnership that has ever existed. You want to have the ability to contribute something that is unique and different and special to your strengths and supplements the weaknesses of those you interact with. So for you as a man, it's important for you to know and understand that you are competitive driven, to understand how you work. With a combination of those two things, you can then look at how you will contribute in your own personal life for how you will define success, how you will secure success for yourself, how you will be able to contribute and add value to those in your life. All begins with knowing how to contribute. There you have it. 3 very simple things. Embrace reality, know how you work, which ultimately allows you to contribute in a healthy, positive, and productive fashion in your life. That is why it's important for us as men to embrace masculinity. If you live your life trying to fight against it, trying to defeat the concept that you want risk, that you want competition, that you want to be held accountable for a production standard, then you're going to find yourself miserable and bereft of confidence. And no one needs that. No one deserves that in their life. So embrace your masculinity. Find how you're uniquely different within the 4 planes of existence. If you look at how we exist in physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional, each of us have different levels of strengths and weaknesses in all those different planes. You will find some men that are very musically gifted, for instance. Musicians have actually turned the tides of battle and negotiations and combat and within country debates. They did this because they were able to articulate and communicate the experience in a way that could not be done with words or in a physical confrontation. That was a very masculine effort for them. Just as masculine as the soldier is that stands to and holds the line. These are people that have the ability to contribute in a way that is competitive and is adding value in a unique and specialized way to the need of those around them. You don't have to be a carbon copy of everyone. You have to know how you as an individual can compete. And when you know how you as an individual can compete, then you will know how to have value for yourself. I hope you enjoyed the episode with me today. I appreciate you spending the time. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming Crafty Men episodes.